Howdy and welcome back. Today is day number 1, 2, 3, 4, which means we're at the passenger car. We're chugging right along. Chugging, because it's a train. So, I'll give the quick disclaimer. If you haven't seen these, I will put a link in the description to the playlist that will contain everything. Each day I'm doing a different piece. So yesterday was the box car, today's the passenger car, the next day will be the observation car. There will also be a controller, a period-based controller. I'm thinking with a steam whistle, though I'm not entirely sure yet. And a station as well. Christmas Day will be the final showcase that will show off the entire train set. I'm thinking maybe a little montage of it going around the track in different shots to Christmas music. I'm not entirely sure, I'm kind of winging this as I'm going, so we'll kind of see as we go. But Christmas Day will be the final video, so if you're not interested in actually seeing this being built, then just come back Christmas Day to see the final product. Now, second disclaimer, this is a slightly weirder one. If you've been paying attention, if anybody's even watched these, and you've been paying attention, you've probably seen my Dremel. This is an actual Dremel. This is the Model 1 Dremel from the 1940s and 50s, so it is 60 or 70 years old. I bought this about 10 years ago when I got sick of modern Dremels that usually lasted me about 3 months and then burn out, and would often get so hot that I couldn't touch them, whereas this, because it's Bakelite, doesn't really get hot except for this one little screw, but even it just kind of gets warm. I pushed this thing a little bit too far the past few days. I always tend to push this thing too far, but I managed to clog it up pretty well with bits and pieces of metal and polishing gunk and all that. And because I've done 3 cars now, I hadn't cleaned it out. Usually I clean it out after I do a project or two, and I didn't, so I actually lost contact and I couldn't turn it on. But I went ahead and took it out, cleaned it out, and it's working now. The thing is, the next 2 cars are going to be the most labor intensive for the Dremel because of the windows, which I'll talk about here in a second. Because of that, because I want this thing working in another 70 years, and because this is kind of a unique project, I'm really trying to not stop and clean stuff off because, I'm filming it. I went ahead and just bought one of these. It's just a $10 kit. This is what I usually buy to get all the bits and odds and ends out of. But I'm going to actually use this. I'll probably burn through it before I'm done with this. In fact, I may burn through it before I'm done with the first car, to be perfectly honest. This thing is a bit higher quality than anything you can buy now, whereas this is about the lowest quality you can buy. It's also going to be a huge dip in power, but I want to keep my Dremel going for the rest of my life. So I think for this project, I'll just burn through that one and not touch the other one. And I'm seeing, never mind, just fingerprint. But I just wanted to make that clear in case you are watching and you wonder why. Now, the passenger car will be pretty much similar to this. Bottom down, it'll be nearly identical with the exception of the fact that I'm adding stairs. Mainly because I hate myself and I want to make my life harder. There's really no other good reason. I like the way they look. The roof will be pretty much identical to this, and the width and length of the cab will be pretty much the same. The big difference in the cab will be the fact that there will be doors on each side here. They're not gonna open and close like these doors. They're just gonna be open doors, sort of like that. And then there's going to be windows. The windows are going to be very labor intensive for the Dremel, there's going to be a lot of metal. In fact, I'm going to be wearing a mask because there's going to be so much metal to cut all this out that I think it's necessary. But that's pretty much all I want to say, so let's start building the base. And remember, if you want to see bits and pieces that I'm not explaining, I probably explained them in these two. For example, why these are separate undercarriage, because there is reason to my madness. I mean, I don't always know what the reason is, but I assume that there's reason. Oh, I'll tell you what, when I am right, I am right. These little stairs were a nightmare to do, but I'm quite happy with how they came out. There's basically 2 little steps for each one. They're on each side. Now the next one, the observation car, will only have 1 set of steps because the back will be like this. It'll have a deck back here, so there won't be any steps back there. American Flyer just sort of cheated and put a little ladder, but I think that's the same thing my Lionel did. But I put in these nice little proper steps, which I'm quite happy with, and the base is done. Just going through this thing sounds like garbage already, and I had to stop because it kept overheating, but still was able to get through this one. Now I just have to build a second one the exact same. I'm going to show part of the construction of the second one, but I'm not going to record cutting this out. Quite honestly, it just took way too much time. And I already have about a terabyte of video files from this project transferred to my computer. I can't take all of the video files. I still have the rest of this one. I still have the observation car, I still have the controller and the station to build. So I'm only about halfway done, and I've already used about 1 terabyte of space on my hard drive. So I'm going to go ahead and just not show cutting the second one out. I'll show the rest of the second one being built, just not the cutting, because it's just too much. I'm trying to figure out what the best way to do this is, and I think if I try and build the window frames and solder them all in place, I'm going to have a very difficult time taping all of it off to keep the brass from getting painted. So I'm thinking that I'm going to try and build the window frame, which is going to be the same sort of, not thin, but relatively thin metal that I've been using for this. It's fairly strong, it's just thin enough to where I can cut with a decent pair of all-metal scissors. And I think that'll help me build it, but I think it'll be next to impossible to try and tape off in these edges. So I'm going to try and slip it down in the seat that I'm building across here, and then we'll use a little bit of epoxy along the top and the sides to hold it all in place. At least that's the plan as of this point. So let's build the seats first. So this is basically what we have, just a nice little bench seat going along here. That, the metal, this is a scrap piece, not a piece I'll actually be using to cut, will kind of slide into. So I can kind of size everything around that and then put some epoxy along the top, not glue, I'm actually going to use epoxy for this, and probably along the sides as well once it's all done. So I guess, well, at some point I have to connect these along the top. But I think right now the best thing to do is start on the window frame, because it's going to be easier to make if these are separated. That, you never really know how something's going to come out until you just sort of do it. I am very pleased with this. It's not done yet, but it's getting there. It's well on its way. Like I said, these just slip in. So this one's actually staying in. Essentially, they slip in this crack down here. I just put a piece of brass in there when I was soldering it, so it kept it at the perfect distance. And the tops, when everything is all painted, will have a little bit of epoxy right along the top, or some sort of adhesive. I'm not like super glue, but something a little bit more appropriate for something like this. I am going to have to paint the inside of the windows. I wasn't planning on doing that, but looking through, it looks kind of weird because of all the soldering points. But that's not too big of an issue. I'll just use the little bottle of blue paint. I didn't get to use it on anything other than the wheels on this, so might as well get to use it for something else before I end up just basically throwing it away. As for the tops, I just used a piece of brass. I figure why not keep the weight down a bit. It's not an issue. I mean, this one's probably going to end up being heavier than that one. I actually tested the tipping point, how far this will go over before it falls. It's almost identical to the American Flyer, which actually surprised me. Because the American Flyer is shorter, and overall the actual chassis down here sits lower too. So this you would think is better balanced. I'll also say I got this nice and flat, whereas this one, the manufactured one, isn't. I'm doing quite good, I think. And I can actually easily open and close the doors on this. But this is nearly done. In fact, next time I talk, this will be done. Because the only things left are, like I said, to finish this, both of these. I have to make the roof, and I'll do that before I do anything else because I want to size it up. And clean it, tape it off, and paint everything. And then put it back together. That's pretty much all that's left at this point. I already cut down... I don't know why I did this already. For some reason I did. I cut down the what essentially is the front part of the hitch, and I made the little loop. So the hitch is all ready to go. And anything else? I think that's pretty much it. Yeah. One thing I should mention, I'm not sure if I mentioned it before you paint something, especially metal, because metal doesn't always like spray paint, wash it with soap and water. In fact, my recommendation, wash it with soap and water, hot soap. Yeah, hot soap. Microwave your soap first. No, hot water and soap. And then if you have filtered water or a water filter, rinse it in cold filtered water, moving your hands along everything, because it makes everything super unslippery, which is a really good surface for the paint to adhere to. And don't forget to dry it really well. Dry it by hand and then let it dry on its own as well. You don't want water spots. So just a quick little tip. And here's our finished passenger car. Woo! Only one more to go. And then a station. And then a controller. The interesting thing is I currently have about 300 gigabytes left on my hard drive. Every 2 hours of footage for this takes 32 gigabytes. Yeah, I'm going to have to do a lot of editing before I start recording the next piece, I'm afraid. But can't complain. Came out really well. I do love the benches on the inside. It's just a simple thing, but I just think it really adds something to it. And I'm definitely glad I went out of my way to paint the insides. I think they would have looked weird, even though I do see that there's a hair from my dog in there somehow. Dog doesn't even come in this room. Oh, look at all those fingerprints. Oh, I will clean this. I will clean all of these before I take the pictures for Instagram. Well, that's a little bit better. Fresh clear coat is always easy to get fingerprints on. They're not permanent fingerprints. They're just normal fingerprints. But I couldn't find any clear blue sheets or anything to use for the top part of the window. So what I did is I just took some spare clear plastic, which from H.E. Harris and Company silver dollar cases, and I cut them to be the right size, and then I just colored the inside with a blue Sharpie, which actually I believe is brilliant blue, which is the same color of blue that all this is. So that worked out pretty well, because Sharpies are essentially a transparent medium. So that works out quite well. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. I mean, it would have been easier if I just found some blue sheets of some sort. But on the upside, what I did find is a little clock that I'm going to use on the station, which will be 2 days from now probably, depending on if I do the station or the controller first. I love this though. I absolutely... The little doors, strangely, and I mean this isn't necessarily by design, I really, or on purpose I should say, it is technically by design, I really like the look of this separate piece of metal up there. I don't know why, but I think it kind of adds something to it. So, this is our train so far. Tomorrow will be the observation car, which will essentially be a modified version of the passenger car. The next day will probably be the station. Day after that, the controller. And the day after that will be the final big showcase video, maybe montage, maybe, I don't know, whatever it is, Christmas Day, blah, blah, blah. Go to Instagram to look at all the fancy, shiny pictures. And thanks for watching, and happy trails.